this place.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to My Bloody Podcast. We're so excited to be here on a Thursday, the middle of October. It's spooky season. Oh, my goodness. We have a wonderful show today. I'm Bryan Kluger, and I'm joined by the host with the most, Preston Barta. Let me hear you scream all up in suburbia.
Yes, I'm ready to get a little neighborly here.
Yeah, let's get neighborly because we have a fantastic, a legendary intercontinental champion of documentaries in the cinema right here, coming all the way in from the West Coast. Joran Roberts, how are you?
Doing good, man. Thank you. Appreciate the intro.
Heck yeah. So we're gonna get into your new show, John Carpenter's Suburban Screams, which is airing on Peacock. But first, we got to start at the beginning. I got to know this with your amazing resume, which we're going to get into. What did your parents show you in the documentary world that you were just like, boom, I'm into documentaries?
Well, it's interesting because, I actually didn't start with documentaries. I started watching movies. I was inspired by, Scorsese and, Kubrick and Carpenter and, all these guys. So the documentary thing kind of fell in my lap after film school.
Oh, that's super cool. And what did you make a documentary in film school? Do you remember which one?
No, actually, I made a scripted film in film school. I was always fascinated by documentaries. Certainly, Errol Morris, things like Grey Gardens, and those kind of really kind of cinematic takes on documentaries. So, I kind of bring a filmmaker like scripted aesthetic. And then meeting up with Brett Morgan and Annette Burstein kind of brought me into the documentary world with Kid Stays in the Picture.
Which is an amazing film. And that's such a cool piece of cinema history that you got to be a part of to make something that great. Do you remember when you were, because that was earlier in your career, that you were, was there a moment back then where you're like, oh my goodness, this is like something so big?
Well, Brett was a friend of mine, and I went to film school with Nanette. I went to high school actually with Brett, and I went to high school with Bob Evans' kid, Josh Evans. So it was an interesting, it was like, all right, I was just like, whatever, trying to make it in the business. But I knew we were making something different when it was like, okay, there's no interviews, so how are we gonna like entertain people for an hour and a half? And when they started presenting these kind of pictures cut up and smoke rising and that stuff, we hadn't really seen that before, and I was like, okay, we're onto something.
That's what I love with a lot of your projects, including the wonderful Haunted series and then John Carpenter's Suburban Screams. You have like an uncanny ability to kind of navigate that documentary style with high-end kind of horror narratives. Is there like a line that you have to walk that you don't tip off to one side too much, or where did you learn to do that?
I mean, it's mostly intuitive. I mean, there's definitely a line to walk because the documentary, when you're dealing with real people, or especially dealing with real people that have had real trauma, you need to, even in Haunted or Suburban Screams, so you need to be cognizant about that. You need to prepare them for that when you take liberties, with their stories. And you're also kind of have these boundaries of the truth, which also are good boundaries because it allows you to explore, what is truth, and bring cinematic qualities, to still make it, an entertaining and impactful experience.
Mm. So was it more organic, you would say, to kind of decide, let's go with the subjects talking in this moment, like they set up the story and everything, and then this might be a better moment for us to do a more narrative based type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, on Haunted, I've been kind of like pioneering this kind of like truth meets scripted docu meets filmmaking thing for quite some time now, even way back, but now we're starting to get some budgets for it. But I think to have a proper experience, I mean, nothing, even in documentary, you're never right. Once the cameras are there, I mean, we know reality TV, all this stuff, it changes everything, right? So why not, use all the tools to kind of create, I think Herzl said, like an ecstatic realism, right?
Right.
So you blur the lines and it's okay as long as you're being true to the intent, I guess, and respectful of the real people involved.
Right, right. So was it like filling in the gray spaces, so to speak, with your own creative interpretations?
It's all simultaneous. I think the trick when you're blending formats and kind of creating what I think this is kind of a new genre of storytelling is that you can't step on like traditional recreation shows, unsolved mysteries, all that stuff's great, but what they do is they kind of talk over the cinematic stuff or show kind of imagery to evoke stuff. But once you're bringing in like scripted dialogue and stuff like this, or trying to create emotion and scares, you can't talk over it. You gotta
Right.
build suspense in the scene like you would in any feature film, and you got to be really careful to let the real part be real and somehow blend into the scripted part, but let that breathe enough where you can have a proper experience and not kill it
Right.
by talking over it.
Yeah, yeah. I was really taken by episode 2, which I believe you directed, and there's a shot of the killer where he's getting arrested, but you show his eyes, and like who knows like what really face he was making, but it's such a eerie and raw feeling in the moment that I feel like that's like probably a really good illustration of you, doing your own creative flourishes throughout.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you responded to that. I mean, with the Killer Comes Home, in Suburban Screams that I directed, it was we're not doing like a psychological profile on the killer, so the goal is to tell the story and have the audience feel like they're being hunted, and what emotions come out of that, almost in the in the victim's shoes. So that choice at the end when he's being arrested, looking directly at camera, kind of bookended, created sort of a finale where he's looking right in your eyes, like you could be next. And I think that elicits all kinds of emotion that's still true to the docu story.
Yeah. Before I turn it back over to Bryan, I got to ask the question that's kind of posed at the very beginning by John Carpenter himself during the intro. How do you look at your neighbors differently?
I mean, listen, I don't live in a world of fear. I think I'm fascinated by what's going on in my neighbors. I mean, I try to shake their hands and say hi to them, here and there. But it is fascinating to look around. I look out my window right now and it's like, what the hell is going on in that house? There's always that curiosity, and certainly, growing up as a kid, there's like a house on the street that's like, oh shit, can I curse on this thing?
Yeah, you're fine.
That's the haunted house, and it gets into your head, so it's an interesting and fun and kind of, I think, something everyone can relate to, like what's happening on the block,
Yeah,
so good place to explore for horror.
definitely.
It is. And like I think just like Haunted and so much in Suburban Screams, I love that in each episode it like tackles something like from maybe a haunted house to an axe wielding guy in a rabbit suit to possessed people to a murderer who's killing journalists. Which
We're
which is great.
journalists.
Yeah, so in the research that you did and your team did, was there something that was just too crazy to like do a story about, or was there something that you really want to tackle that is for a potential next season?
Yeah.
I mean, we go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories. And there's certainly ones that, you know, I'd be excited to get into. And I think the idea of, you know, being able to tell these kind of suburban stories, you're able to kind of filter that lens. And so it's easy to throw out a lot of them. But we can only make 6 on the first season, so there's certainly a chunk more to get into for the next one.
Was there one in this season that you really wanted to dive more into, that you maybe have found like there's the story within the story? Is there something like that you found?
Yeah, I mean, I chose A Killer Comes Home for a reason. With Alan Legier, it is the premise of, it's basically the exact plot of Halloween. And I happen to be doing a John Carpenter show. I mean, a guy murders and gets arrested and comes back and terrorizes his hometown. It is the plot of Halloween. And I think that's like, there's something to that. I certainly would, think that we could get deeper into that one, and there's a reason why I directed that one. I think there's the Bunny Man. I think an urban legend that has truth to it. I think there's a lot of avenues to go with that. I think those two I might be looking at for future things.
In preparation of the episode that you directed, what were the conversations like with Carpenter, or did you end up just chatting about basketball and video games?
John talks when he wants to talk. I mean, we did talk about it. He really wanted to do the Phone Stalker episode. It resonated with him. Something about the technology and the kind of woman that's dealing with almost otherworldly forces through her technology resonated with him. So I'm like, well, he's doing that, I'm gonna do the Halloween one. And he's like, fine. Go for it.
That's great. Is it like, did you get to go on set and watch John in his element at all?
Oh yeah, I was on set for everything.
Everything. And is it like watching? Does it seem like after maybe an absence from coming back, is it like he's like a duck to water? He's like in his element, and you're like watching John do back and forth. Awesome. What was that? Tell me.
It was awesome. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, I grew up on his films. I saw, Escape from New York in the theater as a, kid, and The Thing, and all this. And I've watched them all again now, of course, since I'm making the series, and wanted to make sure some of his DNA kind of got spread throughout. So, seeing him direct and just how decisive he is, and how he works with his actors, and it was super cool. It was a joy. It was awesome.
That's just so great to know that you got to work with him. And was there a moment during this whole endeavor of Suburban Screams where you kind of had an outer body experience and you said, holy shit, this is amazing?
I mean, I don't know if I had an outer body experience, but I appreciate you think it's amazing. I mean, filmmaking's hard, man. I mean, we love it, but it's hard. So there's a lot of like questioning and self-doubt and decision making and all of that stuff. So I don't think I'm happy with the series. I think it's fucking awesome, but I don't really function in the way of like, oh, this is great. It's just not.
Oh my goodness, that's so good. And I want to switch gears a little bit from Suburban Screams, because I really want to bring this up, because Preston and myself are very, very much in love with the dogs and our dog people. And you, I know, are really into dogs, and you got to work with Caesar. How did that come about? What's your relationship with dogs? Why are they the best people? All the questions.
Oh, that's cool you bring that up. Yeah, I love dogs. I had a Boston Terrier and I trained him named Oscar. I have another one named Walter. Oscar passed, but at that time, I had a dog and I watched all of, Dog Whisperer episodes, to train him, and it worked. And I was looking for a gig, and through my agents and all that stuff, they're like, hey, Caesar needs a new show. The Dog Whisperer thing's done. He doesn't own it, blah, blah, blah. How do we reinvent, Caesar Milan and give him a platform? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do that. I got to work with Caesar. I've got a passion for dogs. I love my dog. They're my best friends. So I was able to kind of create a new format for him to shine in, and it was a blast. It was a blast. Got to be with dogs all the time. Got to learn a lot of the behaviors. He's the real deal. He really does what he says. He's amazing.
You got to make some horror movies where dogs don't die.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, like, don't dogs have like this sixth or seventh sense to sense evil and ghosts? And I was like, this would be a perfect episode for Suburban Screams at some point.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, we did one with a cat, I think, in Haunted. I'm not a cat guy, but yeah, I mean, they do have a sixth sense, they're amazing. They're amazing creatures. And mine comes everywhere with me. We shot a bunch in Prague for Suburban Screams, a lot of the scene work stuff, and he flies to Prague with me, and he's there on set. So I'm a dog guy.
Yeah, no, that's great. With all of the documentaries and the films you have done, where did you step into horror? What was the horror door that you walk through?
Let's see. Okay. I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, it's all storytelling and filmmaking. Horror, gives you an avenue. Fear is such a primal emotion. It gives you an avenue to really explore, the human condition, I guess. It might just be cheap thrills or jump scares, but somewhere underneath you can really see what people are made of. So I'd say I was drawn to it like that. I watch the films, obviously The Exorcist, The Shining, Halloween, these are films that have affected me. I had an opportunity, I guess, to do horror with the Haunted series, and fortunately propagate the production company and Howard Owens and BP Jenkins and also Netflix, Amy Cohen, allowed me to do my thing, which was to blend, the truth enhancing the scary, which was, I guess, the genesis of how this stuff started.
Mm-hmm. When in your own consumption of films, whether documentary or narrative, did you notice that, this may be a larger question, but there's a difference to me in watching a horror movie that has so many truths in it, where somebody like Carpenter that kind of weaves in all these real things going on in the world, and whether it's something like They Live with things that are going on in marketing and stuff like that, and then watching something that's a documentary that may deal with those issues in a more head-on way. Have you noticed a big difference between the two? Do you kind of veer towards one towards the other, or do you feel like there's a way to kind of take truths from, whether using it through genre or using it through documentary, that kind of blending them like you do in your
Yeah,
series?
I mean, I think that's what I strive to do, and hopefully pull it off on Suburban Screams. I mean, I think documentary, straight documentary box you in to explore, I guess, but it never really scares you. And if you're able to blend them, you can explore paranormal, you can explore, killer psychopaths, but you can also, evoke emotion and fear into the audience, you know, if you do it with the right touch. And that's why, you know, I'm compelled to pioneer this genre.
Yeah, yeah. In the first episode, I wrote down this note about, you know, curiosity. We were talking about cats earlier, so curiosity killed the cat. This idea of, like, you learn something, but you just feel compelled to know more about it in that supernatural episode. Does something like that, after watching that episode, being creatively involved in it, have you noticed, maybe perhaps not, or maybe had a, because it comes up in the episode and it's a reason why you made the episode in general already, can you fight that impulse to I guess kind of fight the impulse to not be as curious when it involves something as dangerous as something like that, as in that particular episode?
Fight the impulse to be curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're humans, we're curious by
Yeah.
nature, and so in that particular episode, curiosity caused them
Oh, I see what you're
a lot
saying.
of damage. Can you, like, have a meter on you to be able to know, let my curiosity drive me forward here, or maybe that's not a good idea?
Yeah, don't go in the dark basement
I see what
alone.
you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a filmmaker, you know, so it's it all, I'm able to detach, you know, in those, you know, in those moments, and try to be as fearless as possible and as curious as possible, and damn the consequences, you know.
Right.
You know, otherwise how are you going to make something good? So, you know, that's you know, that's the way I look at it. So when you're dealing with dark stuff, supernatural stuff where curiosity kills the cat, I'm willing to be the cat and get killed.
That's really good. When Carpenter came along, was this something he came to you and pitched? Did you come pitch to him? And what was the straw that was like, hey, I'm coming aboard this? Was there something like that?
Yeah, it was, you know, Tony DeSanto over at Diga Studios. We had done something, you know, way back when, and he called me and said, I'm doing a thing with John Carpenter. And I'm like, well, where can I sign up? I mean, it was pretty much that easy. You know, or, well, it's never easy, but you know, but we, yeah, that was it. Of course I wanted to make it. And then, you know, then it was like, okay, so I'm gonna meet John, and like, am I gonna be this guy's best friend and drinking buddy? Hell no, I'm not going to be. He's John Carpenter. But he's, you know, he was a really, I mean, he was a collaborator in his own way. So that was super cool.
That's amazing. I love that. So being involved in the cinema world and getting to make all of these different projects and different genres, it turns out that you're really a cinematic aficionado. Are there any particular scenes in movies that have always stuck with you that help shape you creatively?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna, like, you know, I could talk to you all day about this. I mean, of course. I mean, I think everyone does. I mean, I think the first film that really got me in high school for some reason was Red Desert. It was an Antonioni film. So I'm gonna get like all arty. I went to film school, so I've got a pretty big encyclopedia in my head of stuff. Um, so yeah, that film evoked a lot of interesting emotion in me, kind of almost nihilistic kind of effect through the characters and the cinematography and the set and setting on that. Really obscure reference, but that was it. And then, you know, honestly, like early, like Ralph Bakshi films, he was an animated, yeah, like
Wizards.
yeah, Wizards dope. Heavy Traffic, you know, Street Fight. For some reason, those really resonated with me because they had this real kind of urban, like, dialogue and like grittiness, but they were animated, so there's this like fantasy element to them. So, you know, that, I guess I can draw a parallel to the stuff I'm doing now, where it's like there's kind of this gritty real stuff, but it's fucking animated, so, you know, it's it takes you to a whole different place.
That's cool. if you had to get a line from a movie tattooed on yourself, what line from the movie would it be?
Man, you guys are tough. You guys are tough. I mean, oh Jesus. I mean, the first one pops in my head is the horror. I mean, just because we're making a horror series, it's like the apocalypse. No, I don't know. That's just popping in my head. Why not?
I love that. I love that. Music question for you.
Sure.
If you were to curate a Grateful Dead concert and you got to pick the opening song and the finale song, which songs are you going with?
You know what, man? They just play. I'm sorry, I ain't giving you that one. They play it. I listen. They play it different every time. You know, I do have my favorites, but you know, it's if they're gonna. All right, I'll circle back here. Broke Down Palace resonates with me. My dad, it was one of the few songs my dad would sing. That's a really heartfelt, soulful song to me, so that resonates with me a lot. And Ripple. But you know, at a concert, I just want them to play, and I'm gonna listen and dance and enjoy it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I love that. I love that. I've seen them live too, so it's a joy. Preston, any last questions?
I was gonna close this out, but thank you so incredibly much for your time today. We very much appreciate it. Carpenter's a hero of ours, and this series was fantastic, as Bryan said, and I enjoy Reasons to Fear My Neighbors. So thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad you guys are digging it.
Yeah, and everybody go to Peacock, go to your nearest Peacock and stream John Carpenter's Suburban Screams, and look up Joran Roberts if you're in the area. Buy him a drink, buy him a candy.
Pick you up on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
In every neighborhood, there's always that one house that you ride your bike past just a little bit faster than the others.
Who would do something like this?
We now accepted that we were the hunted. I was scared to death.
In one night, police fielded 50 calls about a man in a rabbit suit with a hatchet.
This was real.
Now you're locking windows. You're locking doors.
I know that house, and I know what it's capable of.
There's something wrong with this place.